Hey guys, how you doing? Amal, Kelly, Faith, Nada, Joa, Osahan, Mr. Brannon. Let me see, Joa. I think the first one is uh, 16 slides, and then the second one's only 5 slides, so it'll be very, very short today. So keep that in mind. Everybody's ready for more WAP. Hey Mark, how are you doing today? Got a couple minutes here yet. Oh my gosh, Joa, you'll live. Good Lord. Hey Patrick, how are you doing? You doing all right today? Nice that you could be here. Hey Daniel. I'm doing well, Mark. Thank you for asking. Oh, it's not that many. Hey Monica, how are you doing today? Glad to see you guys are all coming in. Hey Brendan, what's up? A couple more moments and then we'll get going. Let me get my stuff pulled up on my phone here. Let me see, who else? Caden, how are you doing? Well, good. I'm glad that you're getting this stuff figured out. Carlisle, uh, ich bin gut, Kevin. Ich bin gut. Vishnu, how are you? I'm sure glad you think it's morning yet. You know, in some aspects of the world, it is morning, but not here in north central Texas. But you know what? We'll go with that. All right. So Jace, what's up? Hey, how are you? Gaetan? I don't know you, but glad you're here. Maya, how are you doing today? Glad you're here. That's right, Bishnu. The sun never shines on the British Empire, and we're going to be taking a look at that. Not today, but probably next week. Okay, let's get going today. All right, so we're going to continue on with Unit 3. We're going to look at 3.3 and 3.4 today. 3.4 is really short, and being that Friday, this coming Friday, the 10th, was a scheduled day off from school, we are going to take that day off from school. I will not be doing any lecturing or anything on Friday. You might get an email or two, but there won't be anything due or anything for you to do on Friday. And then on Monday, I think I'm going to change it around a little bit. I think on Monday, I'm going to do a Zoom lesson, and I will send out that email with the password and the Zoom link, because I want to start talking about the DBQ. All right, and one of the things that I want you to do as you prepare for Monday is have that sheet printed off, the worksheet, have the rubric printed off with you. So we're going to work through a DBQ, and it's going to be 5 documents, and we're going to break down the documents and, attempt to write or talk about what we could possibly do for a, context and historical, background, and then, of course, thesis statements and potential outside evidence that could be brought in, because if we do that, that's 4 points on that 10-point rubric if we can nail that part. All right, so that's what we're going to be dealing with on Monday. And again, I will send out the links, and the password to that probably on Monday morning. All right, so today we're going to take a look at the belief systems of these land-based empires that we have been talking about over the last couple of days. And the question that we need to answer is, how did different belief systems endure or change during this period from 1450 to 1750? And one of the things we have to keep in mind is, how is religion used to maintain control of an empire or a country? And how did they change? Okay, what types of conflicts are we going to see? Do they lead to, does a belief system lead to a war? We've already seen that kind of idea with the Crusades, with Christianity versus Islam. But what about the idea of Christianity versus Christianity? We're going to have that issue coming up here today. All right, so that's where we're headed. So let's get going. All right. So one of the first things that we need to consider during this time period is this thing called the Protestant Reformation. And I think we're all pretty comfortable what the Protestant Reformation is. If you just take a look at the word Protestant, you have the word protest in there. And then, of course, Reformation, you have the word reform. So it's a process of protesting against current Christian religions, and in this case it was the Catholic Church, and how do we reform it? All right, so as the Catholic Church grows over time, all right, it's bureaucracy, it's a governmental body, because remember, the Pope is the ultimate figure in political society. A king gets his power from the Pope, and the Pope gets his power from God. So it goes on down, through that order. So if the king is getting his power through the Pope, that means the Pope and the Church, the Catholic Church at the time, is a very, very powerful institution. And we see parts of the church becoming very, very corrupt. And there were efforts to reform the early church, but, they fell apart, of course, and then you get the split between Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy based on belief systems and traditions and practices. That's where we get that split. So we start to see these theological differences. Basically, theological differences, how do we believe in Christianity, but we believe differently in some ways, all right? And they begin to surface in the 14th century. Now, John Wycliffe, this guy right here on our far left, he's in England, and he basically says that priests are unnecessary, all right? We don't need priests for salvation, all right? And he said, and one of his big things here is that he translates parts of the Bible into English, okay? And the reason he does that is for so many people, so people could read it, all right? But the problem with that is that the Catholic Church vilified him for it, all right? Then you have John Huss down here in Bohemia, and basically Bohemia is in the German Austria area of Europe, all right? And in the 14th century, he was declared a heretic, someone who goes against the Catholic Church, because he had similar beliefs back here to John Wycliffe, okay? And, and for his beliefs, he was burned at the stake, okay? The Catholic Church just, put him on this, some sort of a wooden apparatus, put some wood around him, and they burned him for that, and they killed him. They executed him for those beliefs. Zwingli, this gentleman right here, Ulrich Zwingli, he was from Switzerland, Northern Europe, and he says religion should follow the scriptures as written, not that things that evolve afterwards, like priest celibacy. That is something that comes after the Bible was written. That's how the Catholic Church, read it. And Ulrich Zwingli says, no, you should be able to follow your religion based on what is written in the Bible, not by what somebody tells you should be believed. So we have all these issues going on in the Catholic Church, at the time. All right? And then another thing that happens during this is that you have what is called the Babylonian captivity. Okay? We have basically two popes going on here. The papacy was located in Avignon, France. It had moved. There was a problem between French bishops and Italian bishops. So the first pope that was elected during this time period was a French pope. So he basically takes his church. And, it's like a kid getting upset, takes his ball and goes home. So this French pope says, you know what, I'm going to take the headquarters of the church and move it to France. And he does that. And he moves it to Avignon, France here. And French rulers had quite a bit of power over the church at this time just because of where the papacy was located. And there were 70 years of popes in France, all right? And a couple of times there was what we call an anti-pope and a legitimate pope. So we have two popes going on at one time. You have a pope in France, and then you have the anti-pope in Rome, because you have two competing people, trying to get support, all right? And, this office meme that we have going on here, you have Pope John here, you have Pope Benedict here, and you have Pope Gregory here. They're all at different, what do we have here? The parkour popes, because they're all just kind of going at each other with basically the same beliefs, but one of them believes they should have more power than the other. So the church is dealing with that. So there's a lot of problems there, confusing a lot of your Catholics. And then, of course, the church didn't deal with the Black Plague very well. Remember, from a couple of the videos that we saw about the Black Plague, is that people would go to their church and pray and pray and pray for the Black Plague to miss them, and it doesn't, or to heal them, and it doesn't, and you get the Catholic Church, losing support, all right, losing some influence, because people started questioning the church. And one of the people that begin to really, really question the church is a guy by the name of Martin Luther, all right? He is a Catholic monk in Germany. And he points out a couple of corrupt practices, like the selling of indulgences. All right? Basically, like I tell my kids, tell you guys, basically what an indulgence is, it's a fast pass to heaven. Those fast pass tickets that you get in Disney World. That's what this is. It's a fast pass to heaven. And also the idea of what is called simony, S-I-M-O-N-Y, simony. And that's basically selling of church offices. Hey, you want to be head of this office? Well, you can have this office if you pay me for it. All right, that's what it is. So basically what he does, over here to the right, he has 95 grievances. And this is called his 95 thesis. And he takes this thesis, and you have a church door in Wittenberg, and he just takes it and he puts a nail in it and puts it on the door and says, these are my problems with the Catholic Church. All right? And he advocates that faith alone is not enough for salvation. All right? And of course, he says you don't need a priest. He says all you have to do is believe, and believe fully. And of course he's excommunicated for this. The Pope kicks him out of the church. He also teaches that women had direct access to God as well. But the problem here with Protestant churches at the time, there were no avenues for Protestant women to take up leadership roles like in the Catholic Church. Not that the Catholic Church allowed women to become powerful leaders or priests, but they could become nuns, all right? And Protestant religions do not have that capability for women, but it's the idea that women have direct access to God too that's very important. And with this, it does promote women literacy because he said it's very, very important that the Bible be taught at home. And with that in mind, remember, this is also at the same time as Johannes Gutenberg and the printing press, and Martin Luther is able to print off the Bible in the vernacular of Germany, which basically means he can print off the Bible in the German language so that everyday people can read it. Because up until this point, the Catholic Church was the only people that printed off the Bible, and it was always in Latin. All right? Okay, so let's talk about another one. We talked about Lutheranism here. That's Martin Luther begins the Protestant religion of Lutheranism. And then we have John Calvin, and he comes up with the religion called Calvinism. Very, very simple. All right? And it teaches what is called predestination. All right, and the idea of predestination is it is already determined at birth who was to go to heaven and who was to go to hell. All right, they have this saying, like right down here on the left, it says the belief that God is able to save everyone but is unwilling to do so. That is Calvinism. His followers in France were known as Huguenots. His followers in England were called the Puritans. Okay, that should ring a little bit of a bell for you because the Pilgrims who came from England to the New World, Thanksgiving, those guys were Calvinists. They were Puritans, all right? And they left England because they were being persecuted because of their belief system here. And one of the things that Calvinists were known for was for their hard work. Reinvest their profits. Believe God favored them because of their obedience and hard work. And this is what is known as the Protestant, the Protestant work ethic. Okay. Another part of the Protestant Reformation was Anglicanism. And this takes place in England, of course. And it's through King Henry VIII of England. And basically, he wanted the Pope to annul his marriage to his wife because, she gave birth to several daughters and no sons. So, this is at the time where we really don't understand biology too well, so you always blame the woman for giving the king a daughter and no sons. So he says, you know what? You haven't given me any sons. I'm going to divorce you, and I want to divorce you. Hey, Pope, can I divorce my wife? And he says, no, you cannot divorce his wife, because he wanted to marry another woman named Anne Boleyn, because he was for sure, she was going to give him a son. And the Pope refuses this annulment. So basically, what Henry VIII does is, with the approval of Parliament, he sets himself up as the head of his own church, and it is called the Church of England, or the Anglican Church, one that would be free from the Pope. And this is what we all consider the Protestant Reformation. All these different Christian religions that are moving away from the Catholic Church. Again, it's not that the Catholic Church is becoming less important. Religion remains very, very important to people. It's how it is practiced and who is in charge here changes a little bit. All right. So let's take a look at the Orthodox Church in Russia real quick and see what types of reforms they have. Peter the Great establishes the Russian Orthodox Church in Russia, like we've talked about in class. He confirms his power over the church by abolishing the patriarch, the pope-like figure that's in charge of the Orthodox Church in Russia, and he becomes sort of the head of the church. And he incorporates the church into the government a little bit here. He establishes what is called the Synod, the S-Y-N-O-D, Synod, which is a council of priests, like you see there on the right. And they're overseen by a secular bureaucrat who answers only to Peter. All right? Now, what he does change is he raises the age of being a monk to 50 years old. You cannot become a monk until you are 50 years old in the Russian Orthodox Church. And why does he do that? Well, he wants the young to be in the military, all right? And of course, you're going to get a lot of resistance with all these church reforms, and especially in Russia, the peasants resist a little bit, the old believers, resist a little bit, because the church here favors the nobility in Russia. All right, so did the Catholic Church sit back and do nothing? No, they didn't. They fought back. They want to make sure they maintained their followers as well. They do four different things here. You have what is called the Inquisition. All right, it sought out non-believers and basically it punished them. It tortured them for not believing in the Catholic Church. If they were a Protestant, you might be tortured. If you were Jewish, if you were Muslim, you would be tortured until you recanted your beliefs or gave up your old beliefs and said, yes, the Catholic Church is the only one true church. That was what that is what the Inquisition was. You have a new missionary group called the Jesuits, and you have a guy by the name of Ignatius Loyola. That is this gentleman right here. He is a missionary who spreads Catholicism throughout the Spanish Empire. He is the reason why we have Catholicism, or his group is one of the reasons why we have Catholicism all throughout Latin America, Japan, and India as well. And then you have another reform. You have the Council of Trent. All right, and this takes place in the 16th century, and it corrects some of those worst abuses of the church, such as indulgences and simony as well. But the Council of Trent also publishes what is called the Text of Forbidden Books. All right, this is a list of writing banned by the church. And some of those writings included writings by Copernicus. Copernicus was the guy that said, it's not... it is the sun, the heliocentric view of the universe, not a geocentric. And the Catholic Church says, no, you are wrong, because the earth is the center of the galaxy or the universe. Why would God make it any different? And Copernicus and Galileo are, imprisoned for this under house arrest. And it wasn't until 1992 that the Catholic Church kind of basically said, yeah, you know what? Copernicus and Galileo were right, and we were wrong. So, we're just talking, less than 30 years ago that the Catholic Church finally said publicly that, yeah, Galileo and Copernicus were right, all right? And they also, banned Protestant copies of the Bible. And, it works. This Catholic Reformation, this Counter-Reformation works because Western Europe basically remains, the majority of the people basically remain Catholic. And, and if it didn't work, why would Catholicism be the largest Christian religion, today, which it is? All right. Okay, let's talk about the wars of religion. Now, a lot of frequent wars happen because of the idea of Protestantism versus Catholicism. They constantly were at each other. And a lot of it was based on what should the official religion be of a country. Okay? Now, in 1555, you have what is called the Peace of Augsburg. Peace of Augsburg, Augsburg. And basically what that says is that it allows for each German state to choose whether it would become Catholic or religion or Lutheran. And when those Catholic states did that, the leader did that, that would become the official religion of that said state. All right. You also have other problems here. You have in France, King Henry the Fourth was raised a Protestant, okay, in France. But he converted to Catholicism to basically unify the country because the country was mostly French. Again, religion being used to legitimize and solidify power here. And in another edict, effort, he issues what is called the Edict of Nantes, which allows the Huguenots to practice their faith without fear of reprisal in 1598. By 1685, though, Louis XIV, the Sun King, our favorite absolute monarch here, he issues a revocation of the edict. He takes it away. He doesn't want other religions in his nation, in his country. He wants everybody to be Catholic. And what basically this happens here is this affects that many Huguenots, those Calvinists, leave the country. And what this does to France, the Huguenots are skilled craftsmen. and they take a ton of their knowledge with them. So over the long run, this idea of kicking the Huguenots out is going to hurt France socially and economically as well. All right, so let's talk about another war of religion, and this is the big one. And this is called the 30 Years' War. And this goes from 1618 to 1648. Yes, it is one of those weird things that it is 30 years long, unlike the 100 Years' War, which didn't last 100 years. And it's Catholics versus Lutherans here. It leads to economic catastrophe across Europe during this 30-year period. Basically, it starts out as a religious war, all right? Catholics versus Lutherans. But by the end, it turns into a war of dominance and power. Who is in control of what? And of course, much of the destruction of cause across Europe during this time was due to troops being allowed to loot the areas they conquered. They can basically do anything they want as part of their compensation, and that goes on both sides of the war, Lutherans and Catholics, during this time period. And of course, what this 30 Years' War is going to do, it's going to lead to widespread famine, starvation, and of course, when you have war, you have lots of disease as well that goes along with this. Now, what happens? Well, in 1648, you get what is called the Peace of Westphalia. Westphalia, all right? And it allows each area of Europe to choose one of three religions. They can become Catholic, they become Lutheran, or they become Calvinist. Now, France, Spain, Italy, they remain Catholic. Okay? Northern Europe, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, in those areas there, they become Lutheran or Calvinist. And then, of course, England, has their own. They're Anglican. That wasn't one that the rest of Europe could choose, but that is what, England so chose. So in Europe, you could become Lutheran, Catholic, or Calvinist. Those were your three choices there. Now, what happens here? What are some of the effects? Now, the Holy Roman Empire is going to lose political power over this because they choose to give these areas more political autonomy than ever before. They basically take the ideas that they had always governed and they says, now it's up to you to do that. And they give away part of their political power, not really understanding at that time that the Holy Roman Empire, their days were numbered because of what they were doing. It sets up basically what we see as present-day Europe. The beginnings of the political boundaries for Europe are being drawn here. Prussia, which is Germany, and Austria begin to assert themselves because a lot of the war happened on Prussian and Austrian territory, and they suffered tremendous destruction during this war. And what happens here in Prussia is that they begin to develop a very, very strong military to protect itself. And this tradition of strong militaries of the Prussian model, impact Europe well into the 20th century. Who does Peter the Great get when he wants, military advisors? He goes to Prussia to get help here. Okay, so the Germans and the Prussians are very well known for their militaries. All right, so let's quickly get out of Christianity and let's move into Islam. We're going to take a look at the split between Islam here. The Ottoman Empire, they institute Islam as the dominant religion, and we see that with the Safavids, and we see that with the Mughals as well. Sharia law is used, which is a strict Islamic legal system that deals with all aspects of life, such as criminal justice, marital laws, and inheritance. The Ottomans are what we call Sunni Islamic. Okay, and then you have the Safavids, who are Shia, and of course, this is all based on the legitimacy of who was the direct follower after Muhammad. It's all who inherited the power. The Ottomans believe one thing, the Safavids believe the other. So you have the Sunnis, which is the majority of Islam today, believe a certain thing, and then the Shiites believe, Shia and Shiites are the same thing, believe another. So it is based on the legitimacy, who was the caliph, who was the successor to Muhammad, all right? And of course, this religion, even though that's a unifying force in both these countries, it does lead to problems, of course, because Shia Islam and Sunni Islam do not get along in the Ottoman and the Safavid Empire, and that, of course, creates lots of issues between those two societies. All right. And then you have in the Mughal Empire in northern India. They have a lot of religious toleration. And one of the things I just want to make sure I mention here, too, is that the Ottoman Empire had a lot of religious toleration as well. All right, Safavids, not so much. Ottomans and the Mughals do. Akbar in the Mughal tolerates all religions. He gave money to land to Hindus and Muslims. He builds Catholic churches there. He provides land grants for Sikhs. He accepts Hindus into government positions. You know, he would also invite Catholic priests into his capital city so they could just talk religion and discuss Christianity. He tries to ban what is called sati. This is sati. And what sati is, it's a Hindu and Indian tradition where a widowed wife, will throw herself onto her dead husband's funeral pyre. All right? And he tries to ban that, but that practice is so ingrained, it does not go away. Okay? It might lessen it, but it doesn't totally go away. All right. He also tries to establish a religion called Din-e-Ilahi, which basically tries to reconcile the differences between Islam and Hinduism. And does it really work? Well, some of your higher class elites in the government follow it, but the majority of your Muslims and your Hindus do not convert to this very strange, modified religion that Akbar tries to come up with. All right, okay, this is just a quick graph of religious separations. That's what schism means throughout history. Buddhism in India, you have those issues going on. Islam in the Middle East, a disagreement over the rightful successor there. Christianity in Europe and the Byzantine Empire, disagreement on the role of faith, issues of salvation, so on and so on. And then, Christianity in Europe itself, where you get Protestantism, and then you have disagreements over the role of faith again, and the role of the clergy and the Pope, and how to interpret the Bible. So you see a lot of that going on throughout history. So it's just not Christianity, it's just not Islam. It does happen in Hinduism and Buddhism as well. All right, so I think that's a great graph, a great graphic, to kind of get a hold of and try to understand, get a basic understanding of it. All right, and the last thing we're going to deal with here in this PowerPoint is the scientific revolution. I don't think I need to go too much into detail about it. And again, I've already kind of brought this up earlier when I talked about Copernicus. Now, the scientific revolution, one thing that I think is very important that you really remember to understand is the idea of empiricism, whereas it's not discovery and observation is based on reason rather than faith, okay? We take a look for answers to questions that we have and don't base it on your religion or faith. And of course, that challenges ideas that have been thought correct for centuries. And it replaces those ideas with evidence that can be supported by data here. Natural laws show that the world was ordered and natural, and these laws could be applied to society and government. And again, I bring up the geocentric view that the church had taught for years. The earth is the center of the solar system, and the sun rotates around the earth. But Galileo and Copernicus get out there and say, no way, it's not that way at all. Based on our observations and the data we have found, the earth rotates around the sun, okay? So you have the geocentric theory, the heliocentric theory, and then, of course, the scientific revolution is going to set us up for a whole lot of things. And, of course, one of the things that's going to set us up for is the Enlightenment, and we'll look into that when we get to Unit 5. All right, so that brings us to the end of our, discussion on belief systems. how did they endure? All these religions still exist. How did they change? Well, you've got the split between Sunni and Shia Islam. That happens way before this time. But during this time, you have the split in the Catholic Church and Protestantism and the different types of Protestant religions that are out there. That's how they change. But the thing that endures, the thing that is a continuity, is that leaders continue to use religion as a method of solidifying their power. And also religion remains very, very important to people. It does not go away. All right, so let's take a little bit of a break here. I'm going to take a look at if you've asked any questions on the chat, and then we'll start up here with the very short PowerPoint here in just a few moments. All right? Is the Holy Roman Empire the western side of the original? Yes, that's what it is, Elaine. The Holy Roman Empire is the western side of the original empire, of the original Roman Empire. All right. Let me see. Okay, let me see. I don't know what day of the week it was until about 5 minutes. Well, Paxton, I sure hope you figured out what day of the week it is. It is Wednesday, right?
You'll see that I've got this virtual learning plan this week. Okay, so you can
All right.
here and tell you what videos I'm doing and at what time this week, and then the assignments. So this is going to be so what are the assignments? This is I will be finding the progress checks that are on my classroom website. We did this in class together. All of you registered for my
Okay, well, I'm glad to see that I'm going to get you out of here in the next few minutes, so I'm not going to, take too long of a break. Just a quick reminder to those that are, that weren't here at the beginning, that there is no lecture on Friday due to, and I know on the calendar that I sent that I did put a lecture on there, but I did forget that Friday is a day off of school, so we're not going to be dealing with anything school-wise, lecture-wise on that day. You might get an email from me as I remember some things, but other than that, I won't be, emailing you or doing any sort of lectures. And then on Monday, we're going to Zoom. We're going to have a Zoom lecture, and we're going to be taking a look at DBQ. Okay, I want you to have your rubric printed off, and also that worksheet that I sent out to you last week or earlier this week concerning how to break down documents when you don't have your documents in front of you. Okay. Oh, wow, Maya, you're dyeing your hair. What color are you dyeing it? And I want picture. All right, send pictures. And also, please, I asked you guys to take that selfie with, that thing that says, I won't quit because, or I won't give up because. It's just something I want to do. I just want to show people out there that we are not giving up in this time of really weird education that we have going on across the United States and across the world. I just want to show my kids off. That's all I want to do. So please humor an old man, humor your teacher, and do that for me. All right? I do appreciate it. All right, let's get done here. So we're going to take a look. We're going to compare these land-based empires. And again, this PowerPoint is only like 5 slides long, so you don't have to worry, too much about taking, a crap ton of notes here. All right. But what I do talk about, of course, is very important as usual. If it wasn't important, I wouldn't be talking about it. All right. So, building and maintaining these large land-based empires is huge here. That is a major theme in this unit that we're in. And then, of course, next week we're going to head into maritime empires, those ones that are sea-based empires. All right. And the one thing, we saw in here is that these land-based empires implemented policies to solidify or legitimize their rule. And they used religion, they used art, they used architecture. And remember, they are ruling over very diverse populations of people. And the one thing is, not everybody assimilated to it. They rebelled. They fought back against it, because their cultures were not the same as their conquerors. All right, and not all empires were able to maintain that authority. Gunpowder empires declined because they were unable to compete with European trading companies later in this time period. Corrupt leadership, failure to keep up militarily, religious conflicts like we see in Europe, and some of this stuff still reverberate today. All right, so one of the things that are very similar between these, all right, is that all these empires had armies that were well trained. And the armies that we're talking about here of these land-based empires, we're basically talking about the gunpowder empires, the Ottomans, the Safavids, the Mughals. We're also talking about the Russians here. In most cases, they developed this elite group of soldiers. The Ottomans had what we call the Janissaries, and the Safavids had what they call the Ghulams. And remember, these soldiers were former Christian boys that had been forcibly taken, given up by their parents to the respective governments to say, hey, we're going to make you this elite group of soldiers. We're going to put you into our government. We are going to train you. And we're also going to convert you to Islam as well. That's where the soldiers were often recruited from religious minority groups here. And then, of course, you have constant conflict between the Ottomans and the Safavids due to their differences in the belief system as well as border conflicts. And, of course, like I said before in the last lecture, the Ottomans were Sunni and the Safavids were Shia. Now, what do these empires need to do? Well, first of all, they need to centralize their power. Remember, when a government centralizes their power, it basically means that all the power, or the majority of the power of this government, rests with one person or a very selective few. All right, that is what centralizing of bureaucracy is. And that's what the emperors do during this time. The sultans do this as well. You have Louis XIV of France doing this. The Ming and Qing dynasties of China used the civil service exam to assess the abilities of the members of the scholar gentry who wish to enter the government system. All right? Confucianism is the binding force, the unifying force in China at this time. The Ottomans use what is called the Devshirme system, which provides the Sultan a ready pool of civil servants that are loyal to him. The Safavids would enlist a class of bureaucrats from the Persian population. In West Africa, in the Songhai, the leader employs bureaucrats from the educated scholarly class. The Aztecs organized their empire to a federal system of provinces headed by loyal subjects, headed by nobles loyal to the emperor. So you see this system of loyal to the emperor, loyal to a group of people that runs the country. That's how a centralized bureaucracy works. A lot of them have a lot of similarities, all right? The Aztecs, they're a little bit less centralized because they do continue the tributary system, and they keep control through intimidation, force, and fear rather than a centralized bureaucracy. They do have some similarities to it, but when we talk about centralized bureaucracy, you want to be talking about these guys throughout here mostly. The Ottomans, the Ming and Qing, the Safavids, the Songhai in West Africa. Just always think of a country that an emperor, a sultan, a king controls most of the power. And of course, how else do you support this? Well, you have to tax people, all right? The government needs money to support the growing bureaucracy. The Mughals had the Zamindar tax collection from the peasant class. And of course, that's based on land and production. The Ming collect hard currency. All right, paper money could not be used for taxes due to counterfeiting and hyperinflation. So the Ming Dynasty wanted hard currency, silver, for the most part. And they required taxes to be paid in forms of rice and, again, like I said, later silver coins. And the Aztecs used tribute and local products that were made in areas that they conquered. So this idea that the government has to pull in some sort of revenue to finance this growing bureaucracy, because it is definitely not cheap. All right? So here, I just put this chart up here. Sources of legitimacy, religion, okay? The Aztecs use human sacrifice. The European monarchs claim divine right. We also have, the Chinese say they get the mandate of heaven, and if they don't have the mandate, then they get kicked out. Art, portraits of the Qing Emperor and other high officials, miniature paintings in the Ottoman Empire, financial support by artists throughout European rulers. So they are willing to spend money on this art. And then you have monumental architecture, of course, the Taj Mahal, other mosques in the Mughal Empire, European palaces such as the Palace of Versailles in France and Escorial in Spain. So you have lots of ways to show that you have power and how they maintain that power. All right, so that basically ends it for today. I don't want to keep you any longer. So when we start lecture again a week from today, we're going to be dealing with, the Columbian Exchange and the maritime empires. And, of course, we get to discover the Americas next week. And then, of course, what all that comes with that, the Columbian Exchange, the slave trade, sugar, plantations, and all that sort of fun stuff. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go for the day. I hope you're staying safe and, most important, also staying sane. Again, if you have questions, remember, please do not feel bad about texting me or emailing me at any time. I'll get back to you as soon as possible on that sort of stuff. Tomorrow I will be releasing the Unit 3 multiple choice questions on AP Classroom, so let's make sure we're continuing to do those. And people are saying, well, why do we need to do them? The multiple choice questions aren't going to be on the test. That is true, and I totally agree. But the thing is, it helps you learn the content. It has you look at the content in different ways. Who knows? Some of those multiple choice questions could be very, very useful as information on the DBQ. All right. So this is the last time, you'll see me through a live broadcast up until Monday when we do our Zoom over the DBQ. All right. You guys take care, play it safe, and peace out.